All right, so hello everyone. We are going to go over Unit 1, Introduction to the Real Estate Business. And then remember, what are we going to do after we go over this unit? We're going to have a little quiz. So I hope you're ready, right? So in this unit, we're going to talk about appreciation. We'll talk about a little bit about what it means to be a broker, equity buildup, exchanges, fair housing, leverage, liquidity, the real estate licensing, being a sales associate versus sales and a salesperson, and supply and demand. So we know that, when it comes down to real estate, I don't want to sound like the cheese ball, but it's big business, right? There's trillions of dollars involved. In fact, we have been told that we are one of the main driving forces to keeping the economy going. Because every time someone buys or sells a house, it creates about 30 jobs, believe it or not. And we're talking about everything from, of course, real estate agents, to inspectors, to appraisers, to mortgage people, to contractors, and the story goes on and on and on. So we know when we talk about real estate, we're talking really about big business. And there's really a lot of different specializations when we talk about the real estate business. So the first one is brokerage. What is brokerage to you?
Point of contact.
What's that?
Like a point of contact.
Point of contact. What else? What does a broker really do? God bless you, Lauren. What's a broker really do?
Well, he can buy, he can sell, right? And
right now, is that broker? Are they really doing the buying and the selling?
no,
They're bringing
not.
people together.
That's right. They're bringing people together. Like you said, a point of contact, negotiating for someone, helping to work on their behalf. And that's what, they want you to know. The point of contact, bringing people together, whether it's for buying, selling, leasing, renting, exchanging. Now, in the state of Connecticut, we have real estate brokers, and then what's the other classification?
Sales associate or salesperson.
That's right, salesperson or sales associate. So that's what you're probably going for your license right now, to be a salesperson. And so that this class is to help you pass the final exam, the state exam, to be a salesperson, right? And to be licensed in the state of Connecticut. And you also know that this class is not for appraisers, right? And this class is not necessarily for brokers, because that brokers have to take even more classes and do more classroom time. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the second specialization that they want you to know is, of course, the process called appraisal. So of an appraisal, what do appraisers mainly do?
Assess the value of a home or property.
Right? And so they're going to develop an opinion about the property's market value based on established methods and professional judgment. Okay? So that's important to know. Hey, Paul, thanks for joining us there, sir. Good to see you again, my friend. All right. Property management, right? So what does a property manager do?
Leases properties, rents, apartments, etc.
Okay, so the question of the night, one of the questions of the night, do you need a real estate license to be a property manager?
No.
It depends sometimes.
Hey, Marguerite. So Kathleen, you were the one who says it depends, right?
No, I did. Nicole.
Oh, Nicole. All right, so you won the gold star of the night, right? It depends. What does it depend on?
Depends on the company you're working for and what kind of property you're going to lease. What type of property you're going to lease?
Does it matter what kind of property, really? Like if it's a big property, small property? What does it depend on? At least in my opinion, and pretty much when I've talked to the state and so forth, what's it really depend on?
Kind of depends on your responsibilities, doesn't it? What you have to do.
Much, and then really technically how you get paid. Because here's the story. Right now in your mind, you have an idea of what a property manager does. And then Wang has an idea, and Lauren has an idea, and I have an idea. And guess what? We could all have different ideas on what a property manager does. So if I tell you, hey, I have this 25 unit complex, and Marcella, what I want you to do every time it's empty is go in there, clean it up, put out a sign, paint it, put the applications on the counter, answer the phone if somebody calls up because there's a leaky faucet or electrical problems, and be the point of contact for emergencies. And I'll give you a free apartment. Well, do you need to have, that could be considered in some people's minds, that could be considered property manager. Do you need a real estate license for that? Probably not, right? But if I tell you, hey, every time we rent out one of these units, I'm going to give you $100 or $300 or $1,000, because it really doesn't matter on the dollar amount. It matters that if you're getting paid on a transaction to deal with the public, with consumers and clients and customers, do you have to have a real estate license?
Yes.
See, so that's what it really depends on, and that's where it gets a little bit tricky here and there. But anyway, so you should know that property management is a specialization of real estate. Now, how about financing? What's financing all about?
Putting together mortgages and finding a lender for the person who wants to buy.
Right? So putting together mortgages and finding a lender and so forth, right? And so you're going to want to make sure that that person understands the individuals that are involved and what they're doing and all that kind of good stuff, right?
And pre-qualification too.
In the wonderful world of pre-qualification, right? Because what is pre-qualification?
It's where their finances are verified and that they're available. They're basically verified for a certain amount of a mortgage money.
Okay, so they're basically qualified for a certain amount of mortgage money, right? What else? Does it mean that they can definitely get the loan 100% no problem?
No.
Probably not, right? It probably means that, hey, we need to have a good understanding that if all the terms are correct, the way that it's been, that they could be the ones, right, to be able to get the mortgage. They can get the mortgage if nothing has changed. So does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. Subdivision and development. So what's the difference between subdivision and development? That's something they'll want you to know.
Well, subdivision, I mean, would be like a unit, like a place divided into smaller apartments, like smaller parcels. I don't know.
You're pretty much there, but usually we're talking about, when it comes to subdividing, we're talking about what? Land, right? So taking a big parcel of land and dividing it into smaller parcels. That would be considered subdivision. What would be considered development?
Where they're actually putting building or improvements on the land, whether it's commercial property or apartments or homes or whatever.
Right? So basically we're talking about constructing human-made structures, right? We call them improvements. Some people might not think it's an improvement. Some people might think it's worse, but we call them improvements, construction, right? And it could be even things that we didn't realize, like maybe water lines or gas lines or sewer lines or streets and roads and sidewalks and so forth. So that is another specialization of real estate. Home inspection. What's home inspection all about?
So where a licensed and qualified individual will inspect a home by eye to see that and make sure that there's no obvious defects to the home, and if there are, that they will report them on a report and then provide them to the potential buyer.
Okay. So now, do you have to do a home inspection when you buy a house?
No.
No, you really don't. Should, as real estate licensees, should we recommend? Yes, of course, because you do not want there to be some kind of conflict of interest where they're like, oh, well, they told me I really don't have to do a home inspection and ba, 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 ba. And so that would not feel very nice. That would not probably be the right thing to do. But there's no law that says, now, depending on certain types of loans, they might say that you need to do a pest inspection, right? Or you need to do a certain type of inspection for some reason or another. But most of the time, you do not have to necessarily do a home inspection if you don't want to, okay? Counseling, what's counseling all about?
Gives advice to either purchasing, renting.
Right? So helping people make informed decisions about their real estate. And then of course we have education where this is an example. Hopefully you're learning at least a little bit, right? This is an example of education when we talk about real estate. So those are the specializations of real estate. Who has questions on those? Pretty simple, right? All right. So now it's going to get a little bit tricky because we are going to talk about the difference between the yellow book, right? The wonderful world of the modern real estate practice. When we say yellow book, and real life. So Rob, what are you talking about? The difference between the yellow book and real life. Okay. Well, let's talk about the types of real property, right? Types of real property. There's residential, commercial, mixed use, agricultural, industrial, and special purpose. Okay. So residential hopefully should seem pretty easy. Single family homes, people who are living in properties, living in houses. But you see, now it gets a little bit tricky because what's commercial? Well, who knows what's commercial?
It's business properties and office spaces, shopping centers, malls, places that basically have commerce going on.
Right? So here's the whole trickiness about real life. In real life, if you buy a 5-unit apartment building, in real life, you decide that you're going to buy a 5-unit apartment building. What kind of loan do you pretty much need to get?
Commercial.
Commercial. But according to your book, what type of property is that 5-unit?
Residential.
Residential.
It could be 100 units and it's all apartments, people living in there. What is it? Residential.
Residential.
1,000 units. 1,000 units, Rob. What are you talking about? Well, I don't know I don't know what the biggest complexes are. I mean, I was helping this woman a couple weeks or like 3-4 weeks ago from New York City buy a property. She said she lives in a huge apartment complex. The point is that it's all apartments. There's no stores, there's no offices. So that is considered to be residential, right? Commercial, you're talking about, like you said, business space, office centers, stores, theaters. Mixed use, what would mixed use be?
Be like commercial and then you can live above, I guess.
Yeah,
Like if it
commercial.
was like a bar and restaurant.
Yeah, it could be what type of scenario, but commercial and residential put together, right? And then we have industrial, which you understand hopefully that's kind of like warehouses, maybe factories, distribution centers, power plants, that sort of thing. Agricultural. What's agricultural?
Farm, orchard, anything like that.
A ranch. an orchard, a timberland.
Christmas tree farm.
Yeah, Christmas tree farm. That'd be kind of cool, right? To own a Christmas tree farm. I don't know. It seems like it might get boring, except for like 3-4 weeks of the year. You're waiting for these trees to grow. I don't know. It might drive you a little crazy. And then special purpose. So what would special purpose be?
Like a church, school.
Sports arena.
Hey, how do you like this glass, by the way?
Nice.
Pretty cool, right?
It looks cool. It looks cool.
Yeah, churches, schools, community centers, libraries. Think of like usually public buildings that are non-revenue generating, right? And so those are the whole types of real property. Who's got questions on that? Right. Types of housing. So we know, of course, that there's single family detached housing, right? So the housing is not attached to anything else. Okay. Then there's apartment buildings. What's an apartment complex? Who knows? What's an apartment complex?
It's a property that has
Multiple dwellings in like in a single building.
Group of, right? A group of apartment buildings is an apartment complex. Masuma, I'm sorry, my friend, you got to make sure you're on video to get credit for the class. Just as a reminder, you guys. All right. Condominium, right? Now, when we talk about condominium, that's a form of ownership. They even have commercial condominiums, okay? Basically, we're talking about owning a specific unit, right? A specific unit. And then we have the common areas of this condominium complex. So who owns the common areas?
Everyone.
Everyone, right?
Yeah.
That's right. It's an undivided fractional interest, right? So if you own one unit and there's 100 units in the complex, right? How much percent do you own of the pool?
1%.
1%.
1%. Now, can you tell people, listen, I don't want you swimming over here in this corner. This is my 1% of the pool and you just stay. No, you can't do that.
No.
Because it's undivided fractional interest. So, and do you pay taxes, property taxes with a condominium? Yes, right? Because you pay just for your unit. So you pay property taxes. Do you pay an HOA fee usually to govern it? Yes. Do you have your name in the town hall on a deed for a condo?
Yes.
Yes. Masuma, going once, going twice. You gotta be on video. All right. So your name when a condo is, it's on the deed, right? You pay property taxes. You have an undivided fractional interest. Okay. Now, a cooperative. What is a cooperative?
You have shares in the property.
Right. You have shares in the property. Okay. Who owns the co-op? Who owns the building?
The corporation.
A corporation.
The association.
Right? So a corporation owns it. Now, what do you own if you own a co-op? What do you technically own?
A share in the corporation.
That's right. Depending on how many shares and what the number is, the conversion, but you technically own the shares. And what document gives you the right to live in that particular co-op?
It's a lease, isn't it?
Certificate of occupancy?
What's that?
Is it a certificate of occupancy?
No, certificate of occupancy would be more like the town approving you, but you have an agreement with the corporation to allow you to live there, right? So it is called a lease, but what kind of lease? They want you to know the name of the lease,
Title,
Propriety.
right?
proprietary title.
Proprietary lease, okay? So that's important to know as well. All right, so who has questions? Anybody has questions on maybe types of housing so far that we went through? All right, let's keep on going then. What is a PUD?
Planned urban development?
You were almost there. Can it be in the suburban or rural areas? Yes.
Yes.
But not planned urban,
Oh,
Unit.
unit, no.
right? Planned unit development. And so what is that, a PUD?
Isn't it a planned community?
Yes. So think about it this way. You love tennis, right? And you start talking with your friend one day and you're like, oh, there's no place around here that has like really professional courts. And wouldn't it be nice if we built a grass surface and a clay surface and this surface court, and they were all like professional grade level. And then around that, we had like a little clubhouse and we had a little store, and then we could build some houses around there. And then people can live around these professional tennis courts, right? So, you know, we have those, like we have Minnechaug in Glastonbury area for like a golf court, a golf community, but I try to use something a little bit different. But you see, that's like the developer has in their mind something that they believe is going to be maybe it's their passion, and maybe they can build a bunch of houses around a certain type of theme. And it doesn't necessarily even have to be sports. It could be like maybe that developer loves Victorian houses, and so they want to create this neighborhood of development of Victorian houses. So remember, it's mostly like, okay, here is a planned development, right? So that's a PUD, P-U-D. Now, what is a MUD?
Mixed use development.
Right? Mixed use development. And so before we go any further, what I want you to do, because this gets tricky, is try to remember mixed use is vertical. Mixed use is sky scraper. Mixed use is high rise. Okay. Mixed use is at the time when it was built, Hartford 21 in Hartford, right? When it was built, they said it was the second tallest residential building in New England, that there was just one taller one in Boston. I don't know if that's still the case. It probably isn't. I know that they built some tall buildings, more residential in Boston. I know that they built a few in Providence. So things have probably changed since then. But at the time, it was the second tallest residential building, and that's a mixed use. On the first floor, maybe you have some stores, maybe you have some offices, maybe on the second floor you have more offices, and then floors 3 through 30 or 20 or whatever it is, you have residential, and then on the top you have a gym and you have a restaurant, right? So it's a mixed use development. So the easiest way to remember is thinking about vertical, right, or sky rise, or skyscraper or high rise, right? Whereas I always think about PUDs, planned unit development, they're like spread out. So who's got questions between a PUD and a MUD? Because they will try to trick you. All right. Converted use properties. So what does that mean? Converted use properties.
Like a warehouse or maybe like a mill that like turned into apartments,
Yep.
kind of.
Yeah.
Okay.
So remember, we're talking about that developers look at these properties and then they say, oh, wow, I can take this and I might have to do some environmental, but I can take it and I can turn it into a bunch of apartments and so forth. Masuma, just so you know, you have to stay on video to have the class counted for you. Okay?
Yeah,
All right.
my kid, yes, or actually, yeah, my kid is not giving me time to sit in a single place.
I know, but
Sorry about that.
No, that's
Yeah,
okay.
that's why I was logged out when I came.
Yeah, no problem. So otherwise, because remember, the state isn't going to be reviewing these, and sometimes they have to be credited. Okay? So
Just sorry.
there's one type of property, right, that is becoming nationwide, big time converted use properties. So who has any ideas? You know, let's think about it this way. In the 1800s, and I'm just kind of making it up as I'm talking here, but let's say the 1800s or early 1900s, we had all these big factories and mills. And a lot of those have been changed over into apartments, right? Or condos. What type of properties do you think now are now being changed into skating rinks, indoor go-karts, apartments, condos, bike trails?
Malls.
That's right. Indoor skate parks. See, malls are in a transition stage right now. They're trying to figure out, we don't see that happening too much around here. I mean, I guess in Enfield, that mall is kind of like, I don't know if that mall is really even still there. I guess it's still there, but I don't know if the stores are there. I haven't been in there forever. But, and West Farms is still, I think, probably going strong. Buckland's struggling a little bit here and there too. But, you know, throughout the country, a lot of malls are having a lot of problems, right? And so now they're trying to find ways to be able to stay in touch with people and be able to keep generating revenue. So we're going to see a lot of interesting things that are happening with malls these days. And that's the whole thing about converted use properties. All right. Factory built housing. What do you think? What does that mean to you, factory built housing?
A mobile home. Mobile home.
And also manufactured homes that are built.
Kevin, can you call Avery?
Okay. So let's just say somebody's going to build a house the regular old fashioned way that we're used to here in New England. And that means that they're going to excavate a bunch of trees and they're going to dig a hole and they're going to pour concrete foundation and then they're going to get the carpenter and the carpenter is going to start framing the property and then they're going to put a roof and then they're going to put the siding and all that good stuff right on the property. So let's say that that's called stick built. Is everybody with me? Right? That's called stick built. And then we have factory built, which is basically built in a factory with people who are being overseen by supervisors and quality assurance people. So I'm not here to try to sell you anything today, but what I do try to do is open up your mind a little bit. Let me ask you this question. Here we are in New England. Us New Englanders, for the most part, what's better in our minds? Factory built housing or stick built housing?
Stick built.
Factory built because of the quality control.
Yep.
Right? So here's the story. And I actually had a discussion with this with one of my buyers this weekend. Modular or factory built housing is actually better quality. Why? Because it's not built in the elements. Okay? What do we mean by that? Well, do you think sometimes it happens where somebody gets half of the framing done and then it starts raining? And then it rains for 2-3 days and they can't come back. And then the wood gets wet. Do you think the wood twists a little bit? Do you think there's settling involved? Do you think that stuff starts moving here and there? Yes. Now, I'm not going to disparage any tradesperson because I know that they are working hard. They're out there, whether it's framing houses, putting up roofs, plumbing, electricians. It's hard work, right? But when something is built inside and it's able to not have to go through all those through the elements and the issues, and there's more quality supervision on top of them, do you think it's probably built better? And the story is yes, right? But a lot of people, especially New Englanders, they don't want to admit that, or they don't want to actually say that out loud. Right?
It actually uses 60% more materials because it has to withstand the process. I had a modular home, and it has to withstand hurricane winds as it's coming across the highways. It has to withstand a lot of movement and shaking. And so they build it with 60% more materials. It's either 60% or 40%, a lot more material to make it stronger and more rigid so that it can withstand the traveling, which a normal house wouldn't need.
So how was your experience with that? I mean,
Loved the home. It had 6-inch thick walls. It had really thick timbers. It was super solid. Never had a problem with the home at all. It was very, very well built.
all right. Yes, that's what they really pretty much say. You know, but there's a lot of builders, they'll get mad when they hear that. They don't want to hear that, right? And in another class, I can tell you, well, you know what? I might as well tell you the story right now. So here I was, this is about 17 years ago, right? About 17 years ago, I knew somebody, a couple of guys, they said to me, hey, Rob, we're buying this land over here, and we're gonna go down to Pennsylvania for a 3-day seminar, and we're gonna learn how to put together a modular home. Do you wanna get in on this deal with us? And then you can sell the property, and you can do this, and you can do that. And, you know, I kind of know these guys, and I kind of felt like, well, you know what, these guys, they're going to go down there and they're going to party it up. I can't see them sitting there for 8 hours or 10 hours for 3 days. They want to just go and party it up. And I'm like, at that moment in my life, I was like, I don't know if that's a good idea for me to go do that. And plus, I was like a little bit leery of it because I was going to have to put it my money too, right? And that might not be the best idea. So I said, well, I'll tell you what, guys, why don't you do it? And then I'll come and visit you and I'll take a look at it and maybe I'll help you sell it, or maybe I'll help work on it on the next one with you. Oh, okay, sounds good, sounds good. So they went down there, they came back. You might as well say with both of these books together, they came back with a binder like that thick of like, I'm telling you, like IKEA instructions, page by page of what to do. Boom, 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 right? I'm talking like that. And then I was over at the property when the first part of the home came, and they had, you know, I look at these things because I spent like 14 years at UPS. So they had like 15, 20 boxes in the garage of the nuts and the bolts and the brackets and the washers and all this stuff. And so they were going to put together this house. So I was like, oh, this is cool, guys. Da, da, da. All right, looking good, looking good. I'll be back in a couple weeks. I waited like about 10 days. They're like, you got to come and look, man. This is great. This is great. We're pretty much done. So I come over there and I'm like looking at the house. I'm like, man, they pretty much did this in like 2 weeks. They made it happen. This is cool. And I go through each room and I'm looking at the walls and I'm looking at this and looking at that. And then I open up the garage door and they were like, I open up the garage door and there I see all over the garage floor a bunch of nuts and bolts and washers and brackets and like about 4 boxes that weren't even open. And I'm like, hey, you guys done? They're like, yeah, we're done. We pretty much just have to do some finishing touches. And I'm like, well, what about this stuff in the garage? Oh, they're like, they must have sent us some extra parts because we didn't need to use those. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? Something is not exactly right. And then their next words out of their mouth were, hey, are you going to sell the house for us? And once I was, of course, for me to turn down business is pretty hard, right? I don't know you know, it's hard for me to say no, but I thought about it for that second and I was like, well, guys, I don't know if this deal is best for me. You know, you guys, I know you're on a little bit of a busier road. Why don't you put your sign out there and you'll save a bunch of money and maybe we'll do the next one together. But I didn't want anything to do with it because, yes, I do believe modular homes are built stronger, but I also believe that these guys didn't necessarily get like 4 or 5 cases of extra parts. And I didn't want to be part of that. So anyways, you got to be careful, right? You got to be careful. So any questions on modular homes, MUDs, PUDs, converted use properties, anything like that? All right, we'll keep on rolling. Well, let's
Wait, I have a question on that. For the modular home, would it still go through an inspection? Or you've already brought it, so you're kind of just stuck with whatever you brought?
Well, I can tell you what I've seen with modular homes. If somebody's going to buy one, right? When you go, let's say example, you go in the basement. When you go in the basement of a modular home, and I've been in a lot of them, it's pretty actually incredible because you see like all the wiring, like boom, 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 the straightest you can ever imagine, and everything labeled perfect, right? You tell me if I'm wrong, Kathleen. You see the pipes and the, you know, the whatever kind of piping they've used, and everything is like drilled perfect. Everything is nice, and you usually very rarely come up with issues in inspection with a modular home.
You don't normally, Rob, but they do still get fully inspected. You still have to have like your rough plumbing inspected, your rough electrical inspected, then your final plumbing, your final electrical. They do inspect all your connections. They inspect all of your support points, your foundations, all of it. They inspect all of it just like they would with any other home.
Yep, and you have to make sure you get a certificate of occupancy. So here's I had a modular home for sale a little while ago. I don't want to tell you when or where because it's just not the nicest thing to do. But I had the listing, right? Somebody made the offer on the house. They decided they wanted to do an inspection. Here's what they found. One of the bathroom sinks, the faucet was leaking just a little bit, right? Number 2, the dryer vent was not connected. But that's on the builders. They decided not to put in a dryer vent. And then number 3, the builders decided to put a deck up on the house and they didn't stain the deck. And the buyers were like, oh, even though it's treated wood, we want the deck to be stained. Our inspector told us that's supposed to be done. And that's not true. But anyways, the point is there was really nothing wrong with the house when they did the inspection on this big, beautiful 1,900 square foot house that was going to sell for like almost $300,000. So, you know, that was just one example. And I've been told, I haven't been in it, but I've been told there's some like $1 million homes in Greenwich area that are modular homes. So not to say I'm trying to sell you on it, but I think they're pretty cool. You know, I just don't like, I don't like passing them on the highway though. I'm like going way to the left or way to the right because those big trucks.
I don't blame you.
All right. Any other questions on modular homes or manufactured homes? All right. The real estate market. So when we talk about the market, the real estate market, what are we talking about? When we talk about the real estate market, what does that really mean?
The process of buying and selling properties.
Right?
The supply and the demand, like what's out there. And
yeah. So we're talking a place where we can buy and sell properties, you know, the functionality of it, creating demand, creating supply and so forth. And so that is really the marketplace. And so there's a lot of little things when we talk about real estate that are different when we talk about a market or a marketplace, right? So The first thing that we need to think about is supply and demand. So in today's world, July 27th, 2020, what's going on? Let's just say, if you really know almost anything about real estate right here in Connecticut, what's going on with supply and demand?
We have an
The
undersupply.
seller's market.
So we have an undersupply, right? And what do we have for demand?
High demand.
High demand. So we don't have enough properties and we have a high demand. So what is that making the prices do?
Go up.
Go up. And in many cases, the appraisers are not keeping up with the market. They can't find enough comparables necessarily, because it makes it feel like almost every time we have a transaction, we're selling it more than last, right? So I'm going to tell you straightforwardly, and you're not going to get mad at me because I'm just telling you the truth. It's pretty easy to be a real estate agent right now. In one way, meaning that if you have a cousin, a friend, a sister, a brother, an uncle, an aunt, or whatever that wants to sell their house, well, you can put their house on the market and in 3, 4, 5 days get a buyer or get multiple buyers, and you can look like a hero. Da, 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 da. It's so awesome. And then you can think, well, I am the #1 real estate agent. This is going to be so awesome. And everybody loves me and blah, 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 blah. But I'm going to tell you, it's not real life. It is, but it isn't. You know, God bless you. I'm going to be happy for you. But that's not the time when the way the market really is. That's not like how it really is when we're out there on a daily basis. And if you're on the buyer's end, it's really tough because you're showing houses, they come on the market, and then you have to show it within 5 hours. And if you're not making an offer within a day or so, it's already under deposit, or it's multiple offers, and your buyer doesn't necessarily believe you, or your buyer's like, what are you talking about? I gotta go $5,000 more than asking price. And you're like, yes, if you want the place, because there's already 6 offers on it. So you're doing a lot of spinning your wheels if you work with a lot of buyers in today's market. So it's kind of tough. So let's keep talking about supply and demand. So when it does happen, because it's going to happen, when supply increases, we have more houses on the market and demand remains stable, what's going to happen to prices?
Prices gonna go down.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
We don't know when it's going to happen.
Prices will drop.
Everything is so weird, and we can't make pretend we're Nostradamus. We can sit here and we can look into the future and say, oh yeah, it's definitely going to happen this time period. Da, 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 da. But you know what? You would be as much full of baloney as anybody else if you start doing that. Because right now, it's just not making a lot of sense for anything. Because, you know, we do have a lot of people out of work still with COVID, but we still have a huge market, and we still have a high demand. And so the interest rates are still low, and builders are not building a lot of houses. And it's almost like a weird perfect storm where all these things are happening to get things spiraling. And then maybe it's going to cool down this winter, which it always does, right? But then springtime, every springtime, it's a seller's market. Every springtime, the prices get a little bit, things start going a little bit haywire and so forth. So we're just going to have to take it step by step and see what happens. In fact, even this morning, I was on a little webinar, seminar type of thing, and they talked about the world, the definition of foreclosures is going to change. And we're like, well, what do you mean by that? Well, the way that it used to be in the olden days, maybe like last year, in the olden days, if someone didn't pay their mortgage, what would usually happen?
They get foreclosed on.
They get foreclosed on, right? Well, now we're all victims. How's it feel? Do all of you feel good that we're all victims?
It makes me wish I had a mortgage, I guess.
See, it's only if you allow yourself to feel like a victim. I don't go for all this baloney, right? But now we're all victims. We need to be saved by the government. That's what they want you to believe. You, instead of being in this class, you could turn on channel 3, channel 8, channel 61, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, whichever one you want to. I don't care. Whatever your political is, I don't care. But everyone's telling you the same thing. We all have to be saved by some other group or by the government and so forth. So now they said this morning, hey, listen, you know what's going to happen is we're probably not going to have just a regular foreclosures anymore, because now the banks are coming up with these new ideas that say, oh, well, if it was a COVID foreclosure, we're going to have a different definition, and maybe you can stay in your house a little bit longer. And instead of doing this 30-year mortgage, we'll give you a 45-year mortgage, and you won't get kicked out of your house right away, and you won't do this and you won't do that. But guess what? Are the banks and the governments and the insurance companies, are they smarter than us? Yes.
Yeah.
And do you think that you're going to be able to stay in your house and not pay and everything's going to work out great? No. In fact, I have a person right now, this has happened to me twice in the last 3 weeks. I was on vacation last week, but guess what? I wasn't 100% on vacation because I was having a bunch of discussions. Here's a quick example of what has happened already and what's going to happen even a little bit more, and you have to be careful of this. 8 years ago, this woman bought this house for $140,000. That was 8 years ago. 4 years ago, the taxes went up, her insurance went up, she felt like her mortgage was getting a little too expensive for her, and then everybody started talking about, hey, well, you could do a loan modification. You can do a loan modification. Has anybody ever heard of loan modifications? Oh, really? I can do that? Oh, yeah, you can do it, and it's only, and we'll make your monthly loan amount, we'll make your monthly payment go down $200 a month. And she was like, oh, that sounds great. I want to do that because I need to save the $200 a month. Here we are, 3-4 years later, she wants to sell this house and buy another one. Well, guess what? She bought it for $140,000. Now, any type of mortgage, she would be down to like $110,000 as far as her principal balance. The way that they did this by lowering her payment $200 a month is now she owes $190 on the house. And what is she saying? Now, she's a wonderful lady. I'm trying to help her every way I can. But what's she saying? Oh, that's not what they told me. I don't understand. So now I'm stuck in this house forever. What am I going to do? I want a bigger house. I want a better house. Can I just give the house back to them and buy this other house? And she is now the victim because she took their bait. So I guess my whole long story is be careful about taking the bait and understand things are happening with this COVID and with the government and these organizations and insurance companies and the lobbyists and what we can do. Oh, we'll give everybody more money. Instead of it being a regular foreclosure, it'll be a COVID foreclosure. And so now people don't have to pay. Don't worry. Everything's good. And guess what it really is? A bunch of baloney. So do everything you can to just pay your mortgage, pay your rent, and move on in your life. Because if you take the money, you're going to pay the price sooner or later. That's my own little personal story there, because she's the second person in the last 3 weeks that has cried to me that they want to sell their house, but now they actually owe more that they didn't realize because they did a loan modification. Right? So real estate market, supply increases, demand remains stable, prices go down, right? Demand increases, which usually happens about every spring. More buyers want to buy, but there's not necessarily that many more houses on the market. What happens? Prices go up. So who's got questions about supply and demand and the way that it works? Anyone? All right. So supply and demand in the real estate. So there's really, the market reacts, remember, to supply and demand. And so the two characteristics that govern that are called uniqueness and immobility, right? So uniqueness, no matter how identical two parcels look like they are, remember, they are definitely unique. You could have, you ever drive through a neighborhood and maybe they all look like the same kind of house? You'd be like, oh, all these houses are the same. I don't know why they did that, the builder. And I agree. I don't know why the builder does that. It looks stupid sometimes when you have like 20 houses, they're all the same kind of style, you know, row by row by row. I mean, come on, have a little imagination. Try to make a nice little neighborhood for people. But anyways, you can drive it through a neighborhood and they're all the same kind of house. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, all these houses. Well, technically, remember, they're not, because one house might flood, the other one might not. One might have a beautiful view of the sunset, the other one might not. One might have a lot of ledge or radon, the other one might not. So each parcel technically is unique, right? Immobility. Immobility refers to the fact that the property cannot be relocated to satisfy demand where supply is low. So what does that mean? You might be like, well, Rob, I've heard of them moving houses. They can move houses. Yes, but can they move a whole market? Like, example, it's 100 degrees outside and the Coca-Cola plant in Georgia breaks down. So they don't have a lot of supply, let's just say, God forbid, of Coca-Cola in Georgia. Can they call up the New York bottling plant and say, hey, you need to send us 10 truckloads of Coca-Cola right away because we're running out of Coca-Cola down here and it's 100 degrees. They can do that, right? But you can't do that with houses. You can't be like, oh my gosh, in this particular neighborhood or this town, we don't have enough houses. So we need to have a whole bunch of houses being shipped in over here, right? So remember, technically property cannot be relocated to satisfy demand. And so that's called immobility, right? Immobility. So remember, uniqueness and immobility. Who's got questions on those two things? All right, you sure? We're gonna keep on rolling. Who knows about factors that affect supply? What are the factors that affect supply? So when we talk about supply, we're talking about properties. We're talking about homes, certain types of homes. So what are the factors that will affect how many homes there are and what kind of homes and so forth? What are some,
Mortgage rates for one.
what's that?
Mortgage rates for one.
Mortgage rates or monetary government policies, right?
Materials.
Materials. What else? Material costs,
Yeah.
right? So like, for instance, how come we don't see a lot of homes built with steel?
Too expensive.
Too expensive, right? That will affect the supply of homes built with steel, right? Labor force. So I don't know if this is true, but I remember years and years ago, they say, oh, if you were a plumber or electrician, you can go to Alaska and get paid 3 times more because they don't have enough electricians and plumbers, right? And I think it's kind of starting to get like that in today's world where there's not enough good licensed insured tradespeople, right? And that's why they can get $125 an hour, $85, $95 an hour. Go to your mechanic. right? I have a running joke with my friend. It's like, I remember when we were kids, you know, if you had to bring your car to the garage, you were like, oh man, it's gonna be like $200 no matter what. I don't care what they do. And then like 15, 20 years later, it was like, oh man, it's gonna be like $400. I don't care, no matter what they do. It turns out to be like 400. Now it's 800. Bring your car to the garage. You're gonna be paying between $650 and $900 for everything. I don't care what they find out. Muffler, exhaust, power steering. You're lucky if you can get out sometimes with $800. You're doing pretty good. And don't even to think about going to the dealership, right? Or call all right, I'm not going to mention a specific name of a company, but call one of those companies, electricians or plumbers that you see on the TV commercials. You're going to be paying some big bucks because they know that they can get it. And they'll tell you, they'll give you a free estimate, but you gotta be careful. So anyways, labor force, construction and material costs, government policies, controls, monetary policies. How about local governments? How do they affect supply?
Taxes. Like whether if they're raising taxes, then that could be unfavorable to trying to sell a home in your market.
Yep. Do you know that so talking about taxes, there was a time, not so much right now, but maybe like 3-4 years ago and before, let's say from 2009 to 2014, 15, where people couldn't sell their house because by the time they pay for, of course, you know, they always got to say the real estate agent and the attorney, but also the conveyance taxes. By the time they pay for all those taxes, because, you know, we have a conveyance tax here in Connecticut. So what is a conveyance tax? Who knows what that is, conveyance tax?
Fee to sell your home. That's another fee for Connecticut.
Right? So you get to, when you sell your home, you get to pay a tax to the state and to the town.
Like a sales tax.
Yeah, except when you're not buying, when you're selling.
Yeah.
Like, what do you know that when you sell it, you got to pay a tax?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
You know, that first came into play, I'm going to guesstimate, it was early days when I was doing real estate, maybe 2002 or 3, something like that, was the conveyance tax. And they said, oh, we're only going to do it for 1 year and then we're going to sunset. Right? And then they said, oh, we got to do it 1 more year. And then they said, oh, well, you know, the towns and the state, they're used to getting that money, so now we can't get rid of it.
They never take away a tax, Rob, ever.
Never. I remember I was 18, 19 years old at UPS. I was a part-time supervisor going to college. I was all excited, starting to make some money. And we saw on the news, the governor, Lowell Weicker, we were going to be one of the few states now beginning to start an income tax. And they said, oh, we're only going to do it for 1 year. Here we are. What is it? 30, 40 years later, do you pay income tax to the state of Connecticut? Oh, yeah. Right? Anyways, so local governments, though, so we talked about state government conveyance, but local governments could be like, for instance, land use controls or building codes or zoning ordinances. So, for example, if they say, hey, you have to have at least a ½ an acre of land in order to build a single family home in our town. Will that affect the supply of single family homes being built? Yeah. Right. I read something really quick. I'm getting into a bad habit where I just read the headlines on articles. Does anybody do that? Just read the headlines and I'm like, I keep moving forward. But I read this headline and I kept moving forward on my phone. And then I'm like, wait a minute. And I went to go back to it. I couldn't find it. But there was something along the lines of in Minneapolis or in some town in Minnesota, but I think it said Minneapolis, they were doing some restrictions on building single family homes because they want there to be more density. They want there to be more density, which I don't know how that makes sense. But if anybody ever comes up with an idea like that or sees an article like that, they want to share it, you can. But the whole point is that local ordinances will affect supply as well. So when I think about this, I'm thinking about sellers. I'm thinking about builders, factors that affect supply. Then we need to know the factors that affect demand. So what are some of the factors that affect demand?
Jobs,
Jobs, right? Wages, employment. What else?
Population.
What else?
Location.
Demographics, right? Now, when we talk about demographics, things get a little bit tricky because then people start thinking about, well, that could be discrimination stuff. So we have to be really careful with that. But think about it this way, you know, business is business. So if you're a builder, right, are you going to build $1 million home in a town where everybody makes on average $50,000 a year? No, it wouldn't make any sense. So you need to know demographics, right? You need to know employment and wage levels because if you were to build a house, you want to have demand for it, right? And there's certain things that you might do to homes that you know, you want to make sure you have enough demand for it. So we're talking about population. Again, why is it that we always see the market is so hot in Florida, North Carolina, Texas, California? Because that's where everybody's moving to. Yeah. When was the last time you heard somebody say, oh my gosh, this is awesome. I can't wait until I retire and I'm just stay right here in Connecticut. This is so great. You have Paul's laughing. You ever hear anybody say that? Right? So like, do you think it would be an awesome idea to go and build like a huge active 55 complex? I don't know. I think we pretty much have enough of them around here because it's not, I don't know if the demand is really there for them, and they're usually pretty expensive these days now. Right? Demographics. So like we talked about, number of occupants per household, family income, number of children, right? It's kind of interesting, like the demand, you know, for housing. It's there was, and I don't know, we're in a transition period. There was some weird kind of demand all of a sudden that all these people wanted to move back to the cities, right? Because, oh, we can have walk scores, you know, you can walk to this and walk to that. And it all sounds good. Don't get me wrong. We're supposed to be doing that stuff, you know. I got to do some walking. I mean, you know, but now I see an article the other day that's over with because everybody's afraid with COVID and this and that to go move into the city with everybody else. Now everybody's got to go back to the suburban areas. Right. So now the demand is going to be back because I still don't understand. And now if you're one of these people, God bless you, but who the heck is spending $1,700 a month on a 1-bedroom apartment in like Wethersfield or Hartford or Rocky Hill or Glastonbury or, you know, Windsor? I mean, are you crazy? You're going to spend $1,700 on a little 1-bedroom apartment that you don't get anything? You can use the pet spa thing though, and you have a Starbucks right next door, so maybe that's why it's worth it. Like, what's wrong with people? They're spending that amount of money. I would not, you know, come on, are you serious? Do you have that much money to waste? Right? But that's where the demand was going, is for these luxury apartments. So who has questions about factors affecting supply, factors affecting demand? No one? All right, let's talk about financial considerations for the homeowner. So the first thing we need to discuss is equity. What is the word equity? What does equity mean?
It's the difference in the home's value versus how much you owe on it or
Right.
don't owe.
Okay, so there's really a couple of ways to increase your equity. What are the ways to increase your equity?
Pay off your loan, pay more on your loan.
That's right, pay your loan down. Pay your loan down. There's a program that I'm going through that I constantly work on that I just love, and it's called Acceleration of Debt Reduction. Pay everything off fast as possible. You don't have to wait 30 years so you can make the bank more money. They want you to wait the 30 years, okay? But anyways, pay your loan down. What's another way in which you can increase your equity?
Make home improvements that are value packed, like improve your kitchen or your master bath.
Yeah, so improve the value of your property, right? So you want to do that. That is what is in your control. There's not a lot of things these days that are really in our control, but guess what? You can do some of those things. If you have an extra $100, pay your debt down quicker. If you have some extra money and you can put a little bit nicer landscaping, you can fix up your bathroom, fix up your kitchen, make your home worth more. Those are the things you can do. That's an investment, right? Tax deductions. What are some of the tax deductions that we have with owning property?
Your mortgage interest.
Right? So up to a certain amount of money, right, you can deduct your mortgage interest, which is huge because there's no other loan program that you can deduct that interest, right? What else? What's another tax deduction or tax advantage? How about if it's how about the wonderful world of capital gains? So who knows what are capital gains?
If it's a rental property or rental income,
Exactly.
And
Okay.
then when you sell a house and then you have money coming in from that sale. Is that a capital gain?
So think about all, you're pretty much there. Think about all these investments that are out there, right? You are, let's say, and I'm not gonna be mad at you. What am I supposed to say? I can't be fighting with everybody all the time, right, Paul? Can't do it. It's impossible, right? Maybe you're one of these Apple people. I'm not an Apple person. I'm an Android person, okay? To me, if you got the Apple, that's like having a toy. Okay? I'm a businessman, okay? But I'm not gonna be mad at you. But let's say you're like, oh my gosh, I just had my mocha frappuccino latte at Starbucks, and I found out that they're coming out with the new 27XG32 iPhone, and I need to get that, right? And I'm gonna buy stock in that company because they're the best ever and I just love them, right? And Android stinks. Then I'll be right there. No, Android doesn't stink, Apple stinks. Anyways, the point is you love Apple and you think they're coming out with this awesome new phone, so you decide to buy their stock. And so their stock right now, we're gonna make pretend is $10 a share, and you buy it at $10 a share, and you sell it. It goes up to $50 a share, and you sell it. Well, you just made $40 a share, and if you bought 10,000 shares, you made $400,000, right? On a stock. Well, do you have to pay taxes on the difference between what you bought it at and what you sold it at?
yes.
Yeah. And you might have to pay, depending on your tax bracket, you might have to pay like 30%. So that 400,000, you might have to pay 120 grand. Well, look at real estate. you can buy a house, and if it's your primary residence. So what's the definition of primary residence? Does anybody know?
You have to live there for the first 2 years? Owning?
You're almost there. You have to live there what? For at least 2 of the last 5 years. So if you lived in that house for at least 2 of the last 5 years, you can say that that's your primary residence. And if you, and I think this is huge, and I don't like to give any other these entities a lot of credit, but for the government to keep this going, I think it's pretty important. If you're single, the first $250,000 is exempt for that capital gains. So if you bought the house at $100,000 and sold it for $350,000, you just made 250 grand. You don't have to pay taxes on that. If you're married, who knows what the capital gains exemption is?
500,000.
500, that's huge. So go out there and buy some properties and fix them up and live in there for a couple of years, and then you can sell it and you could do it again and do it again and do it again. And I'll give you definitely a lot of kudos, because I know that that's not easy and it's a lot of work, and I really can't do it because I'm like, just want to stay in one place. I don't want to be moving every time. But if you can do it, that's awesome. You make a lot of money, right? So does everyone understand that? The whole story with the capital gains tax, right? So remember, single people up to 250, if it was your primary residence, so that means for at least the 2 of the last 5 years. Married is 500,000. Now, there's also a thing called the 1031 exchange, deferred exchange, for investment properties. What's that all about?
You're exempt from the capital gains tax if you transfer the earnings into a comparable type of property.
Right. So, Paul, you're right there, but I just get a little bit nervous about using the word exempt. You're technically what?
Deferred.
Yes. Because remember, you can never just get rid of it as an investor, but you can defer it where you pay, somebody else pays it another time. So here I am. This is a true story. I got the old Italian guy, you know, and sorry, I gotta let you know he's Italian because he's just a funny dude and I'm Italian. And so I feel like I can make a little bit fun of the situation. And if you get mad at me, I'm sorry, but that's the way that it's gonna go, right? The old Italian guy, he says, oh, Rob, you know, 1982, I bought this property. It's an 8-unit commercial building, and I bought it for $180,000, and right now it's worth $1 million. And we can probably sell it for like 900 something thousand. He could probably make, let's say he makes like $700,000. So he's nervous because he wants to go down to Florida with the rest of his children and spend time with his grandchildren, but he doesn't want to lose a penny, because he's old Italian guy, and old Italian guys do not want to lose any money, right? So he's like, well, if I sell it, yeah, I'm making $700,000, but I might have to give $210,000 to the government. So does he want to give the IRS $200,000? No. So the big thing that we're trying to do is figure out, hey, can we find him a comparable? Now, it doesn't have to be exact, but a similar property down in the Florida area that he likes, that he can basically, and this has to be a deliberate thing. It's not like you sell your property and then you go buy another one, you say, oh, I'm doing the 1031. It's like right in the beginning stages when you're selling your property, you have to get an accountant, lawyer type of person involved. They're like an intermediary consultant person. They're showing you, okay, if you were to sell this property, you have to put another property within 90 days or 180 days on the market that's similar, and so forth. And that way you can defer the taxes. You don't have to pay all those taxes up front. Does that make sense to everyone? So that's the whole thing about 1031. Who's got questions on that? It's kind of not really part exactly of this unit, but it, you know, it is a tax benefit that we talked about a little bit. So we talked about tax deductions, where we talked about deducting mortgage interest, right? We talked about capital gains taxes. We didn't mention that home buyers can make a penalty-free withdrawal from their IRA or their retirement account for down payment, right? And I think that's really about it. So let's talk about real estate investments. Stay on this whole theme. Rate of return. So right now there's discrimination going on in real estate. What do people think of that? Are you mad about it? Who knows what kind of discrimination is going on? For sure, 1000%, no doubt about it. There are people who worked their butt off, saved up their money to buy an investment property. Whether it's a little condo, single family home, 2 unit, 5 unit, 20 unit, 100 units. They worked their butt off because they felt like, hey, I can invest in real estate and I can invest in these apartments. And then guess what happened? The COVID came along, right? And the government said, oh, remember, don't get mad at me, but I'm telling you straight up. The government says, oh, you renters, you don't have to pay. So are they discriminating against investment property owners? Yes, because the government didn't say, the government didn't say, oh, by the way, you investment property owners, you don't have to pay us taxes because we told the renters they can stay there rent free. So you don't have to pay the taxes, or you don't have to pay your mortgage or insurance, right? So you see, that's what there's a big issue going on right now. So I can sit here and tell you in your book, it says an advantage of real estate investment is rate of return, because that's what the book says. But I can tell you right now, I used to own 54 apartments, 13 buildings throughout, you know, Hartford County area. Thank God I still don't. I do a lot of property management and I own a few little things here and there. But if I owned all those properties at this moment and 50% of these renters said I'm not going to pay, I would be a bankrupt person. Right? So I'm not so sure about if the rate of return is still there. But believe me, I'm still very much a proponent. I just think that that's not, and I hate to use the word, I'm not even going to say it. I think that that's a form of discrimination against landowners and property owners, right? But I do have empathy for people who have a hard time paying their rent, but I also have empathy for people who have a hard time paying their mortgage too, right? We're all going through hard times together, but it's not fair. If it's got to be one way, it's got to be for everybody.
That's right.
Right? Can't just be for one type of scenario, but not for everybody else.
Right.
Because when you go to, so Marguerite, you got me going, right? But no.
Oh yeah, I'm a full agreement.
You got me going, right?
Yeah.
Just one more point I'll make. When you go to the housing court, they look at you as the landlord like you're the millionaire.
Yeah, that's what they do.
And you could be scrimping pennies to keep things going, but you usually lose the scenario, okay?
Yeah.
But another advantage of real estate for the most of the time, like we talked about, is control, right? So you can't control so much that Apple stock. You might be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna buy that new Apple phone and that's gonna help make the stock go up. Well, it's not gonna help make it go up that much. The most you can do is, you know, vote for the board of directors. But even the board of directors at Apple, they own so many shares, you're not going to have a lot of control. But if you buy investment property, you can control it. You can hopefully pick the right tenants, people who have who've shown that they have a good record, people who show that they have money saved up as a cushion. You can keep it in nice condition. You can help keep the value of it up by doing some of those things. So control is an advantage. appreciation is an advantage. So who knows what's appreciation when it comes to investment properties,
When it increases
What
in value.
in value?
right? Increases in value, right? And so we know that there is a thing called intrinsic value.
Yeah.
So there's just certain areas, you can't fight it, you can't argue with it, that people like more than other areas. There's people like waterfront property. Why are we also have this desire to have waterfront property? Like, look at Rhonda. She's in the side of the bridge right now. Look at me. I'm on the beach. Right?
Yeah. And
We
people
all
just
want to be in the waterfront. We want to be in the waterfront property, right? So intrinsic value means that there's basically just certain preferences that people have. And if you're able to invest in those particular areas, you're usually going to do better. Equity buildup, like we talked about, a couple different ways, you know, paying more down. Try to put yourself on debt reduction acceleration. You do not want to be owing people anything. You want to be able to walk around debt-free and feel like you're on top of the world, right? I'm telling you, it will change your life. You won't feel like you have these other people ruling your life every day. Debt acceleration. Leverage. What's leverage?
actually,
Who knows what's
balance.
leverage?
Actually, leverage is it's halfway.
It's when you use
Using other people's money?
Right? So I just told you, pay down your debt as much as you can. But now I'm going to tell you, listen, right? There's a difference here between the house you live in and investments, in my opinion. Because you can get me and 2 other real estate agent people and 5 financial advisors and a couple of lawyers. They're going to all give you their own opinion. So what I'm telling you is, hey, when it comes to the house you live in, don't put it at risk. Pay that baby off and know that you have a place to go to lay down your head after you work hard, and you don't have to worry about anything. But then when it comes to some investments, you might want to try to, like, oh, well, I can borrow more money and I can buy this property to help me make more money and so forth. And that is a beauty of what we have when, you know, with these mortgages. Because think about it this way: if we didn't have these types of loans, probably do any of us really have the discipline in order to save up $250,000 to buy a house?
No,
Right?
no, not realistic. Not for most of us.
Not most of us, right?
Right.
So, but anyways, you know, and you have to make sure when it comes to leverage, the risk is directly proportional. Where they're going to be looking at you, the less money you put down, right? The more money you have to borrow, the higher the risk you are. And so you have to be prepared that you're going to have to pay a higher interest rate, more closing costs, and all that kind of stuff. All right. And then we talked a lot about tax benefits already. How about the world of depreciation? So before you answer,
Look,
most people, when they hear the word depreciation, sounds bad. However, when we talk about real estate investing or real estate business people, is depreciation good or bad?
it's good.
It's great. Why is depreciation good? What is it that we talk about?
I guess,
the prices are coming down.
yes, and less tax burden.
Marguerite, you got it. Here's the whole thing. You want to be a smart business person, right? Within the framework of the law, you want to pay as less taxes as possible.
Right.
Right? You don't want to pay the government more money than you have to. The best business people in the world, they know the tax the tax codes, I hate to use
Loopholes.
loopholes, right? But
Yep.
they know that. It's not against the law. It's just being smart. So
Yep.
here's the whole point. What the government allows real estate investors to do is say, hey, listen, every year, not the land, but every year that property, let's just say a 3-family home, it has more wear and tear. So technically it's worth less. And so they let you write that off.
Yes.
Right? Deduct that from your taxes.
Yep.
Right? And so depreciation, or they call it cost recovery, right?
Mhm.
Allows an investor to recover the cost of an income producing asset through tax deductions over the asset's useful life. So remember, they don't consider land to be a depreciating asset, but when it comes to real estate, that's an awesome opportunity for you.
Yep.
That's another tax benefit. Does that make sense? Who's got questions on that? Because a lot of us, when we use the word depreciation, we automatically think it's bad. But
Right.
it's a good thing when it comes
Great
to.
in real estate. Mhm.
And then we talked about capital gains. So those are the advantages. Now we have some disadvantages. So the first one is liquidity. What does that mean, liquidity?
You can't sell it quickly and get your money back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're like, oh my gosh, I need this money in 2 days, it's probably not going to happen. I mean, you can do that with stock. You know, you're not going to be able to do that necessarily with. It's going to be hard to do that with a property.
You almost like consider asset rich, but cash poor. You know, just can't liquidate. Yeah.
They call that. You know what they call that? All hat and no cattle.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
I learned
so that's a Western phrase where the cowboys, they wear the big hat, but they got no cattle to back them up. It's all hat and no cattle.
No cattle.
Yeah. So anyways, liquidity. You got the money to back you up, right? And then how about active management? So you could be that person to say, oh, well, if I buy investment property, I don't really need to be there all the time, and I can just let it go. Well, guess what? The more you let it go, then the more everybody else is going to take over that property, right? And it's going to go down. So you can pay somebody, but the point is that you need to have a human being watching that property, eyes on it, making sure that the tenants are being taken care of, making sure that the rents are being collected, making sure the property is being taken care of in good condition. Otherwise, you're going to have problems. And did you have a question? Right. So active management is important. And then lastly, like we know with everything, there is a certain amount of risk. The property could go down, the property could go up.
Right.
But, you got to do the best you can, right?
Right.
That really is Unit 1. So who has questions on Unit 1? Is there anything that you want to discuss a little bit more? We talked about real estate brokerage and real estate brokers. We talked about the specializations with appraisals, property management, financing, the differences between subdividing and development, home inspections, real estate counseling. We talked about the types of real estate, right? Residential, commercial, mixed use, industrial, agricultural, special purpose, right? We talked about discrimination, but fair housing, very, very important. You have to make sure you're treating everybody correctly and treating everybody the same. We talked about the real estate market with supply and demand, uniqueness and mobility. We talked about some of the tax deductions, the tax credits, appreciation, rate of return, equity buildup, leveraging. And then we talked a little bit about some of the disadvantages. So do you feel comfortable about this unit?
Yeah.
Do I got a yes from everyone?
Yes.
All right.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes,
now, my
yes.
friends, it's time for the quiz.
It's time.
So take out a piece of paper and a pencil. Let's get things rolling. All right, so let's see how everybody did. Now, here's the hard part about this. The hard part is that each one is worth how many points?
10 points.
I know. And if you get less than 80% correct, what do you need to do?
Study.
You need to study and send me $10 more. I'm only kidding, but you need to study more, right? All right. So number one, office buildings and retail space are examples of what?
A,
A,
commercial.
commercial estate.
You got it. Okay. Number two, a person who advises a real estate client who is making a purchase to use or invest in real estate is called
C,
Yeah.
counselor.
Yeah, counselor.
counselor. You got it. Number three, all of these factors will tend to affect demand for real estate except
A,
A, transfer taxes, I hope.
that's right, because what do transfer taxes affect?
Supply.
Supply.
Fine.
I'm gonna get you right.
Because remember, some people might be like, oh, I better just keep my house instead of selling it because I can't pay the transfer taxes. And that's a true story. It sounds kind of sad, but it could be true. Number four, when the population of a town suddenly increases, which of these is most likely to occur?
D, prices will increase.
D for dog, prices are going
D.
to increase.
D.
D,
You got it. Number five, property management, appraisal, financing, and development are all what?
B,
A,
B,
B.
B.
So
Oh,
B,
oh,
they
yep,
are
B, sorry.
professionals
B.
in the real estate industry
Yes.
because they're not part of government financial policy.
No. I was thinking specializations in real estate.
I know. You see how they get you?
Uh-huh,
They try to trick
they
you.
got me. Yep.
Yep. So sometimes take that extra breath before you answer really quick, like, you know, on your questions, because that's how the state, and believe me, the some of these get really, really tricky. We'll talk more about that after. Number six, the idea that no two parcels of land are exactly alike is called what?
C.
C.
Uniqueness.
C.
All right. So remember, uniqueness. Each one is different. Number seven, all of these factors can affect the supply of real estate except
D,
B.
I was thinking A.
A. C.
So you see how they get you when you know the difference between the factors that affect supply versus the factors that affect demand. So remember, if you look at these three, this is all really about building and selling houses,
Right.
right? Building and selling.
Yep.
It's A.
oh, shoot.
That's how they get you. So the supply, that's that. So that the answer is A, demographics, because that's
Demographics, labor force, construction.
that's about buyers, right? Like again, if the demographics of the buyers are this, this, and this, well, the demand, that's going to affect the demand of that particular property you have. All right, number eight, a property owner who does not want to deal with the everyday tasks of managing a rental property can hire what?
A.
A property manager.
You got it. Number nine, when the supply of a certain commodity decreases while demand remains the same price of that commodity will tend to what?
Increase. B.
B. Yep.
B, you got it. All right, and number 10, all of these are examples of government policies that can affect the real estate market except
B. B.
Shortage of skilled labor, building materials.
B.
you got it. B is the answer.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
So, my friends, hopefully you kicked some butt. Did anybody get Two or less wrong? All right, good.
It's 4 or less. Yeah, I got 1 wrong.